Alright guys, welcome back. In this video we're going to look at what government can do, what types of policies we compare to environmental standards compared with emissions taxes when it comes to trying to reduce pollution. So as we've discussed, we know that polluters, if left to just the market devices without any sort of regulation or tax being placed, they are going to pollute too much at a point where the marginal social cost is greater than the marginal social benefit. In fact, if we look here, what this is representing, by the way, so you can draw this. This is not something you're going to need to model for test questions or on the AP exam. It's helpful just to understand, because the main argument is going to be that one of these is more efficient than the other as a government response. But you're typically going to be asked about that conceptually, not actually to draw it. So you can take the notes how you want. It won't hurt though to draw this. So if we look at each axis, so we'll start here. Well, if we start on our x-axis, that's just the quantity of pollution, so that's pretty standard. The y is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be the marginal benefit to the polluter. All right, so we are saying this is the benefit that they receive from polluting from one additional unit of pollution. So how do they benefit? Well, they benefit by reducing their costs, because if they were to not pollute and they were to dispose of that waste more safely or not produce as much waste, that would be instilling costs on them. So if we look at these downward sloping curves that are showing, essentially we have two firms, so let me kind of label this a little bit better. This will be firm B, this will be firm A, same thing over here, A and B. Forgot to do that before when I set this up. What this is showing us is each of their marginal benefits. So how much are they going to pollute if left to their own devices and just the market itself? Well, they're going to pollute all the way until their marginal benefit is zero, because they are still gaining by producing additional units of pollution. So if this is at 600, that means that B is going to pollute 600 units or make 600 units of pollution. A is also going to make 600 units of pollution. So we'll have a total of 1,200 units of pollution, and that's our starting point for both of these, all right? So they're each making 600 units of pollution because they each pollute until the marginal benefit of that last unit of pollution is zero. So government can step in. There are a couple things they can do. They can tax the pollution. They can also just create an environmental standard, which is a regulation saying you're not allowed to pollute more than this amount. Another thing they can do is something called cap and trade, which is dealt with in another video. But for now, we're going to look at just these two options. So, is one more efficient than the other? Well, if we start with the environmental standards, what that's going to do, that's making a law about the quantity. All right, the tax is going to say, well, we're going to tax the price of pollution. We're going to make you pay $200 per unit of pollution. This one over here is saying you just aren't allowed to pollute more than 300 units, and that sounds good, right? So the government, in both of these cases, the government's goal is that they have decided that 600 units of pollution is the socially optimal amount. All right, that's where the marginal social cost is equal to the marginal social benefit. So the government's goal, again, for this, as just a little bit more background, is that they want 600 units of pollution. All right, so in this case, since there are two producers, they just set a law that says, all right, no individual producer can pollute more than 300 units. And so we look here at SA, so that's the standard for A. That means that they're going to produce 300 units. For firm B, they're also going to pollute 300 units. Our total is 600. The government has gotten exactly what they wanted. However, is this efficient? And hopefully what we notice here is that these two numbers on our y-axis are not the same, the marginal benefit to each one. In fact, what we see here is that for firm B, their marginal benefit of that last unit of pollution is 300, whereas the marginal benefit to firm A is only 150. Firm B is getting twice as much benefit from that last unit of pollution as A is. And, well, this is troublesome for us, for economists at the very least, because what's happening here is, well, we can see on the next one, we'll see why this one, the tax is going to be more optimal. But kind of right now, the idea is that we want the marginal benefit of that last unit of pollution to be equal for both of them. In other words, why are we letting A pollute as much as B when the benefit that they're accruing is half of what B is getting by that unit of pollution? So something here is off because the marginal benefit each is receiving from that last unit of pollution is not equal. So there might be a better way to do this. So if we look at the tax, in this case, they're not setting the quantity. In this case, they're essentially setting a price for pollution. So now it costs you $200 to pollute per unit. So what this is going to do, instead of them going all the way to zero, where the marginal benefit of that last unit of pollution is zero, now it would really be negative 200, right? Because they have to pay a $200 tax. So now they're going to go down to the point only where the marginal benefit is equal to the tax. And so this tax is going to be $200. And what do we see happening here? Well, we see that firm B is going to produce 400 units of pollution when they are faced with this tax. Firm A, we follow along their curve, they're going to produce 200 units of pollution when they are faced with this tax. We add that up, 200 plus 400, and guess what? They also are capped at 600 units of pollution. It's not the quantity control like this one was, where they did 3 and 3. This one, they were each allowed to do whatever they wanted, they just had to pay $200 for it. And so again, we have the same outcome as far as the total pollution. 600 here, 600 units here. So from that standpoint, it doesn't matter which one the government does, because in either one, they can essentially get that outcome of having 600 units of pollution. What's different here, though, is that the marginal benefit to each polluter is exactly the same. Because firm B has a greater marginal benefit from that pollution, it helps their business more and in turn, potentially society as well, they are going to produce a larger quantity than A. Because A's is a smaller marginal benefit, they're going to be encouraged to actually reduce their pollution more. Economists don't care which firm produces what. In fact, that's where the third one comes in about cap and trade, is that part of the thing with a tax is the tax companies want to avoid a tax, and so that will incentivize them to figure out ways to try to pollute less so that they can avoid that tax. With the quantity control, there's no penalty as long as you go up to 300. So they will never be incentivized to actually pollute less than 300 units because they're allowed to at no cost to them from 0 to 300. They just have to make sure they don't pollute 301 units. Here, they always would like to reduce this tax on them, so the way to do that is to pollute less. And so this one is better for multiple reasons. For one, because the marginal benefit to each polluter is equal, unlike with the environmental standard. And then secondly is what this one does to incentives, which is this incentivizes firms to continue to reduce pollution so that they can avoid this tax as much as possible. Till next time, this has been a LaMoney production.